In today's video, we're taking a look at an all-new quadcopter from Eachine. Now, this is called the Eachine Viswhoop, and we're going to cover quite a lot today. We're going to cover the initial setup guide just to get you going into binding to your transmitter, especially if you don't have the DJI transmitter. We're also going to be discussing the flight characteristics and what I find really interesting about this quadcopter setup, and also the price. This quadcopter basically costs $100 minus the Hakcrc Vista, so that's pretty crazy here. And the overall setup is really nice. However, there are a couple things which I don't like. And again, everything is in the timetables down below, so you can skip to whatever part of the video you want, and is also available in the video progress bar. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So when you receive your Eachine Vista, what you do get is you obviously get the quadcopter itself, just like this in this format. You might need to redo the zip tie back here to hold the antenna into place correctly because it was just hanging out. And the reason why it's not into place correctly is so it could actually fit into this case here. So just take a note of that. So you want to make sure you fix this. And the zip tie will hold it just fine in a couple crashes here. Now, some of the things they provide you in the packages, which is really great here, they give you 4 propellers, which is great, and some tools and stuff to go ahead and modify and fix whatever you need, and also some spare parts, which is always really nice to have. An instruction manual, the Hakcrc Vista instruction manual, and these prop guards. Now, these prop guards are very important because they are pretty flimsy. I've already broken one, but I was able to keep flying after I bent it back into place. And let me show you that really quickly. Right there, it just cracked right on that, and it was kind of bent inside. I just had to rebend it into place. However, and again, it is really great that they do provide you with 2 because they know that these are going to be very flimsy and they're going to end up breaking. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the quadcopter, see its overall execution, and my opinions and thoughts about some of the things about this quadcopter. So let's go ahead and start off with the mounts here. So they're using some 3D printed mounts, and they're not TPU. As you can tell, I've already broken the protective side of the mount, which is something I don't really like right now, but you can't really complain that much with the overall flying experience and also the price here. So that's something that I would have done differently, set this up at a probably TPU instead of just hard PLA plastic right there. So yeah, that's one main thing that I would have done differently here. Now, another thing that they should have done also from the factory is secure these wires with some sort of a zip tie, even though I don't recommend zip ties. But when you do get this, try to just use a small piece of tape that's going to hold the wires down. Because if these rip and they rip from the motor, basically you're going to have to buy yourself a new motor. And it's a very, see, as you can tell here, these were not wrapped very nicely, and they could easily go into the propeller and just get disintegrated. And you know, that's it. You ruined your whole day, and you're going to have to wait for a new motor to arrive. So that's something you want to do when you first receive it here. Now, the motors. Now, these are well known to be the motors that are not the most durable. However, you know, these Happy Model Eachine motors are just some of the most efficient motors I have ever seen. I'm going to take these apart after this video, and I'm going to set them up on my thrust stand and see the amount of efficiency they have, because the way I tested efficiency on these was I put a 350 milliamp HV LiPo. You're supposed to put this on a 450 to 850 milliamp 3S to 4S, but I put it on a 3S 350, which is super tiny batteries. And I had to put 2 batteries, and I only connected 1 just so they could actually hold into place. And I was still able to fly for 2.8 minutes. So its overall efficiency is out of this world. However, what we come down to is the wind resistance, we should say. Wind resistance is just like any other whoop, basically. The wind's going to push it around. You're going to get to see that in the video also. So that's something you got to take into consideration. It was a kind of a windy day that day that I was flying. And this is basically meant for indoors and obviously not very windy days to go fly out and get your photography or footage or whatever it might be. Now, for the flight controller, they're using the Novice 3 flight controller, which is a pretty good. This is one of the most fantastic flight controllers, I would say, that's using the dual FET design and also with the built-in receiver. They're really good for low power applications such as this. It keeps the overall weight down. The range is decent, so you'll be able to do quite a lot. Not as much as a full-fledged receiver, but it'll get you going for a really good price and at the same time keep the overall weight down. And this is something you want, especially when you're putting a fat module like this Hakcrc Vista in there. That thing is huge. And it's pretty heavy, so most of the weight's really coming from the Hakcrc Vista here. These motors too, these 1204 motors, 5000 kV, I'm impressed with them. I'm impressed with their efficiency more than anything, and that's just gorgeous. I mean, this has the potential, if we rip out the Hakcrc Vista, to fly for like maybe 7 minutes, which is gonna be crazy. And then you might even be able to put a GoPro Hero 8, maybe. Don't take my word for that. I'll probably be testing that later on though. So the overall flight controller is really great. The Hakcrc Vista is pretty good. Unfortunately, I can only fly at 25 milliwatts because I'm in Europe. So that's the only legal limit we could fly. And it's just, you could bypass it. But if you bypass it, you're unable to record on the DVR for, I don't know why. So I've just been flying it on 25 milliwatts. And it handles just as good as a rapid fire on 25 milliwatts, to be honest. So I'm fine with that. As we can tell, they're using Rush FPV antennas here. With the Hakcrc Vista unit I got, it wasn't Rush FPV, but maybe they're the ones designing it for the Hakcrc here, which would be a really nice combo. And to be honest, it shows actually. Now, if you're not going to be putting anything up here, I'd highly recommend you put your battery up here. So you remove the battery strap from the bottom, put it up here. It'll fly much better. But I kept it here just to fly it default as it comes in the box, which how most people are going to end up flying it anyways here. Now, in terms of noise or anything weird going on with it, flipping out or doing, it didn't do anything. It was flying really great. Obviously, the wind resistance wasn't there, so you get to see the wind pushing it around here. And the prop guards here aren't helping, especially when that wind picks up. Now, again, if we take a closer look on the inside, we see this is also something really nice of the way they've executed this. They have the Hakcrc, this thing gets so hot. You have no idea how hot this thing gets. They have it lifted and it's mounted to the upper plate. And there's quite a lot of, well, not a lot of space, but there's a pretty good amount of space between the flight control and the Hakcrc Vista. They're not on the same mount. So the flight controller is mounted on the bottom frame and this is mounted on the upper frame. And what's really nice, the way they've mounted it, is that you can actually feel the heat getting dissipated onto the top plate of the carbon fiber, which again is really great for the lifespan of the Hakcrc Vista. And that, again, that's something, maybe it was by coincidence, but it's a really great execution in my opinion. I really like that. Instead of having it just being levitated right on top of the flight controller and there's nothing else allowing the heat to dissipate. So the carbon fiber is very good at conducting heat as well. So it's dissipating and acting as a heat sink, which then again is a really nice touch here. So now let's go ahead and jump into the beta flight settings. There are a couple things you need in order to bind it. Now, some people might have to take out the whole thing in order to bind it, but there's an easier way to do that through the beta flight configurator. All right, guys, so the first thing we want to do now, especially if you're going to be using an FrSky controller, this is very important because out of the box, it's basically configured to run with the DJI controller. So we want it to run with the FrSky, especially if you want it to run with an FrSky. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and go into connect here. And once we're connected, we want to go into the configurations tab right on the left here. Then we want to scroll down until we find receiver. Now, out of the box, it's set to serial-based receiver S-Bus. You might think that's correct, but that's actually incorrect. That's actually the DJI setup right now. What we want to go for is the SPI RX support, which means the inbuilt receiver, FrSky D, save and reboot, and we're almost done. Now, to bind it, there's two ways. The first way you really want to try to avoid, which is taking the whole thing apart, because that bind button is right next to the microcontroller unit in the middle of the flight controller. So you want to avoid that. So the best way to do it is you would go into your CLI tab here. You would go here and type bind underscore RX, and you should see it blinking. Let me show you this. So you can see the quadcopter blinking right now, and when I press enter, it should go solid. And that means you're in bind mode. So it's very important. Then you go ahead and bind it. When you bind, make sure you're in D8. And if your FrSky controller doesn't have D8, then you could try the FrSky X instead of the FrSky D in the configuration, but that does kind of reduce the range slightly. But I'd recommend you go with a multi-protocol module. That's what I always do with my FrSkys. And yeah, and that's really it for this step. So let's go ahead and jump into the next step. All right, guys, so right now let's go ahead and take a look at the flight footage here. Now, this was a pretty windy day, and the gusts of wind sometimes kick in, and you could see it play with the quadcopter. And this is apparent with any kind of scene whoop, from the bigger ones to the smaller ones. They all have this problem here, especially with the smaller ones. But what I can tell you is when the wind wasn't really picking up, it was flying really, really great. Very smooth, and it's not acrobatic. So if you can do a couple acrobatic moves here and there, but it's not really made for that. It's meant to capture these nice slow cinematic shots, but as you can tell here, I'm flying it okay here. There is slight gusts of wind, and it's still holding itself very well right here. The overall range is pretty good. As you can tell, I was flying at 25 milliwatts. I don't know if it actually says that somewhere. But yeah, I was flying at 25 milliwatts. I can only fly at 25 milliwatts because I'm in Europe. Once you plug it into the PC, it activates and then it just sets you up in European standards. And we can see that it's flying just pretty good. It flies really great. The efficiency is just amazing on this. That's the thing that stood out for me. I was like, okay, I'm going to put a 350 milliamp small HV. You know, those tiny HVs. And you know, this is what I was flying right here. And the thing is, what I had on here was two 300 milliamp HVs, and only one was connected, just so I can have the batteries not slip. And this is meant for 450 to 850 milliamp batteries. So I did order some 850s, 750s, and 650s, which I'll be revisiting later, because this thing has the capability to fly for a pretty long time. If it does get that amount of flight time, what you can do is, if you're really going for a professional shoot, you can do test runs and see how it looks before you actually get your big quadcopter out and then start, you know, flying around trying to get these shots. And it's a really nice quadcopter. It's not the best, and but it's almost there. You know, I know the durability standpoint of the motors is going to be slightly lower than any others, but the prop guards do help. The prop guards do break, so you should order some extra prop guards. The propeller motor combo is superb, in my opinion. Very, very great. Very, very good. The overall tune was pretty fine. Even in wind like this, it was doing very, very well here. And well, that's it, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Everything is linked down below if you could check those out. Those do greatly support the channel. And come join my Patreon, where I'll probably be giving this away for one of you guys out there. And new Patrons get their own separate giveaway per month. So if I get like 3 new Patrons this month, there's a separate giveaway between them, other than the 10 giveaways I do. So, and you get a lot more perks: secret shop access, schematic access to my open hardware flight controller, where you can design your own and sell anything. So I do have a lot of perks on my Patreon, and you also do support the channel. But either way, it's a win-win situation. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.